Now, a new report has put the government of Tanzanian President Suluhu Hassan on the spot. The Oakland Institute, a US-based environmental think tank, found that the authorities forcefully confiscated some 5,880 cattle and 767 goats and sheep from the Maasai community in November and December last year, and is now demanding that owners pay their heavy fines. Those failing to pay have their livestock auctioned and moved away. But why is this feud in the Serengeti taking so long to resolve? Let's find out in this Wild of Africa report.
Last year, the representatives from Maasai communities were up in arms after losing a land dispute against the Tanzanian government. The East Africa Court of Justice ruled that the ancestral land of the Maasais could be cordoned off for wildlife protection. The lawyers insisted that the nomadic tribe experienced forceful evictions and the land is being cleared out for safaris. The court upheld the government's arguments that growing Maasai population represented an encroachment on Tanzanian wildlife habitat.
The court has ruled against us, and it is their decision that we did not prove that this community was not living outside, but they have taken it that they were living inside the Serengeti National Park, and they've also decided that there were no forceful evictions, and there was no loss of life, there was no loss of property, and none of these people were injured during the evictions.
A conservancy in the country's biggest game reserve, the Serengeti, is at the center of the brawl between the government and Maasai communities, the Ngorongoro Conservancy. Tanzania's government has remained adamant that relocations will pave way for safari tourism and conservation. The government argues that it will aid the country's environment and economic development. It termed the Maasai's displacement as voluntary. The government says it would suit the lives of the semi-nomadic pastoralists. But Mara Goldman, a researcher and professor at the University of Colorado, who has also worked at the Maasai, disagrees with the government's analogy.
In Loliondo, Maasai were evicted by force at gunpoint. Many were hurt. Bomos, which are the traditional sort of homesteads, were burned, and people were removed from an area that was legally registered village land. So this is not conservation area, this is village land.
Earlier, the Tanzanian government was accused of denying access to essential health services, grazing lands, water points, and salt licks to compel the Maasai to move out of the area.
The Maasai are the conservators of nature, and by disconnecting them from wildlife is a way of killing conservation and all of the ecosystems in northern Tanzania. For two reasons, right? You've got an ecosystem that was dependent on some use of the landscape by pastoralism. There's a great deal of research that shows the compatibility of pastoralism and wildlife. So one, you're changing the ecosystem by entirely removing people. On the other, you're removing people that were protecting wildlife, and you're creating people that are sort of going to be antagonistic to wildlife.
The Ngorongoro Conservation Area is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Maasai villages occupy a small fraction of the site within the Loliondo commune. The African Commission on Human and People's Rights is currently in Tanzania. The rights group is seeking information on the human rights situation for indigenous people in the Loliondo and Ngorongoro areas. Several Tanzanian human rights agencies have urged the Commission to be impartial and organize confidential private hearing sessions with victims of the displacement. However, the battle over land ownership continues. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.